I will call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Rules Committee of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of June 7 special meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you. Are there any comments, changes? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes of June 7?
Aye.
I see it's unanimous. The next item is approving the minutes of May 23 regular meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Second? Thank you, Jack. Comments, changes? Looks like we're all set. All those in favor, please?
Aye.
Great. It looks unanimous. Next item is an update from the Technology Committee. Lois.
All right, this will be quick. Going back to some earlier meeting where the technology we were using failed, I just want you to know that we did another test, and of course it worked, but we figured out what was wrong. There was some switch that was wrong, that in the craziness that was going on that we didn't really catch. But we do need to keep in mind that that was a kludge from the beginning. So we're a lot more reluctant to go there, and that's just that one. The other thing that has happened since then was the RFP was issued for the money that we got from whatever the funding was. But unfortunately, no one responded to the RFP, in spite of our best efforts of trying to get somebody. So I heard from Kate today, she's going to reissue the RFP. So if anyone knows people that are good at implementation of an audio-visual hybrid system, including electrical wiring and things like that. The RFP will be reissued again. Send names to either Mike or myself because we're involved. Okay, Michael, you look like you've got it. Awesome.
No, I'm just wondering, doesn't the Board of Ed have something? I mean, if we find out who their vendor was?
Oh, no, we've been in touch with them.
Okay.
But the truth is that these type of people are in short supply.
Yeah.
And even though our project is well funded, it's not a $10,000 project, it is complex and requires physical changes to the auditorium, and a number of people that do the technology are not the kind of people that do auditorium structures. In other words, they'll put in a computer system and make it work, but that's different than what we need because we're integrating it in a system, and the person in particular that has done a lot of town work has been really, really busy. So I'm going to give it another shot, but the project is run by Kate, so we have been supporting that. So that's the part where, fortunately, we haven't needed hybrid again, or we're not using hybrid again, which when we do, besides the technology, I recommend we have some discussions on things like quorums and how we define it and how we want it to work. Because some things came up that were a surprise, but we don't need to go into that. We'll go into that when we're ready to have a full table discussion. I'm just putting it out there. So the other half of the project, there are two parts to the project. One was the auditorium and getting that totally supported for hybrid and new projector and things like that. The second half of the project was to make hybrid meetings available in some of the conference rooms around Town Hall. And for that, I turn it over to, drum roll, to Mike.
So we tested a unit that's called a CanDAO and bought one. So we need to do some more testing. Not really, we can do it in 206 and the Mather Center. We need a TV monitor in the room, so we can't do it in 119. The biggest problem we have in 206 is not hooking. This unit is terrific. You just plug in a button and push it and you're on, but it's navigating a smart TV to find out how you put in the passwords and everything. So Kate knows how to manage the Samsung TV, but the process works, and what we would do would be to train someone from a designee from each RTM committee if they wanted to offer a hybrid option in addition to the video the TV79 is doing. We would train them on how to use the unit, but right now we're limited to 2 locations until we buy a monitor that we can roll around the building.
I'd like to add into that, there is money to buy the monitor and the stand as part of that whole proposal we did. It just hasn't,
Yeah, TV 79 didn't have the money for that, but that's got to come out of the ARPA money.
but we do have the money.
Yeah.
It just hasn't gotten
Yeah,
there.
TV 79 doesn't, but ARPA does.
Okay. Good, okay. Next, without objection, I'd like to move the RTM committee description updates topic up to now. I have a special request from Mr. Davis, and I told him that, so no problem at all doing that. Is there any objection doing that?
No?
Okay.
I apologize. Which item? I was-
It's the 12th, no.
Second to last.
Second to last item, I'll have to number those, I guess. RTM committee description updates.
Got it, thank you.
And Frank, I guess I'll start, just recognize you and listen.
Thank you. Before going any further, I think we should acknowledge the work that Jack has done over the last couple of months in issuing his documentation. I'm sure he will explain to us, but it's a 6-page item that we all got this afternoon with far more commissions, boards,
I don't know how you thought of all of those, Jack. How many?
departments. I mean, I thought I could name 5 departments in town, but no. In any case, this will play a role in what we're about to do, and that is to revisit the Appendix B description of what the 7 standing committees do. To that end, if you ask me to, I'll communicate with the committee chairs, ask them to review the document and offer their suggestions, consolidate that, and then possibly a resolution we can talk about at our next meeting. Or if it gets more complicated than that, well, it will get complicated for good reason, and we won't be able to do that. But I hope that we will. What's been noted is a couple of anomalies, such as in the Public Works Department, there's a responsibility for town incinerators. Well, we don't have that, so we can take that work. And then there are some other maintenance items like that, which we always call buggy whips. There's some buggy whips buried in those descriptions. Plus, the responsibility that the RTM committees have for reviewing the budget proposals that are made each year. And each committee has a certain structure for doing that. That doesn't seem to be mentioned, or I'm missing it. So it may be that we can correct for that by putting something at the top that applies to all the committees. We'll see how that plays out. Well, I'm looking forward to working on it.
All right, so, and then we would attach what Jack did to be added in as an appendix or as part of the,
Let me go.
To be determined, can I turn it over to Brother Davis here?
Let me first go with why this came to my attention. And then, when I mentioned it to Kate in one of our meetings, I don't know if you recall, her mouth, it was virtual, but all of a sudden you saw her mouth drop. And my response to her was, that's the same response I had when I read this. The RTM is not responsible for matters of administration, personnel, and to a certain extent finance. Now, when this was written, there may have been 10 employees in the town. So maybe it was a little, I'm being facetious a little bit, but maybe it was a little different of what the inputs are. What I tried to do, and I tried to think about this, is I had a word that I used because, in fact, F&B is the liaison for the Board of Ed back to the RTM. And I thought I would use that word, and in discussion with Mike Hikes, the late Mike Hikes, he always said, no, I don't like that word. channel. So the fact is that government's structured with checks and balances. So from the financial perspective, the Board of Finance is the check and balance on the two main boards, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education. What some people do not realize is the RTM is the check and balance on the Board of Finance. Specifically, in towns like Darien, where you have both a Board of Finance and an RTM, we are legally one of the budget-making authorities in town. So it is both the Board of Finance and the RTM that are budget-making authorities. That is part of the reason why Lamont changed some of his gubernatorial executive orders, which was at one time taking away the RTMs from you. It's what every other town that has both of these agrees to. There's one that just has an RTM and a Board of Finance. But that was the financial area. The other part of it is policy. So policy is an interesting thing because on the Board of Ed, we might have input like any other group to say, yeah, maybe we want this or not, but we really don't have direct input. Same on all these boards and commissions, we may have input into it and have conversations. The only time we have a real say on policy is either something needs to be codified or, we're adopting to what a state regulation has put down to us on that. Or if the policy requires a financial amount of money, at which time we have complete control to say yea or nay. You then have capital, and there's a little understanding that it has to be reminded frequently. Most capital projects are an up and down. The RTM doesn't have the right to say, oh, you want $300,000 for this project. Oh, we only think we're going to give you $250,000. No, that's not our responsibility. We do have the right on a capital project, let's say the police want 4 cars.
Right.
We can say, no, you're only getting 3 this year. That's something we can because, or, there's 5 schools that have to get this one device. Well, we're only giving you 3 this year, and you'll get the other 2 next year. Then we can separate it. But for the most part, it's up and down. So it came down to looking at all the boards, the commissions, and by the way, how I came up with the departments is just knowing how the Board of Finance and how F&B looks at the budget using the same categories. But then going into the various boards, the other boards, some of which have no financial implementation for that, or, really, it's so minor that most of us really don't look at it. The harbor master, as an example, as $2,000. Okay, you want $2,000, fine. Because it's not going to affect the number. So by looking at all this, it basically said, which I think most of the groups do, all right, you are responsible within a committee to understand what's going on with all the boards, commissions, advisory, reserve funds, grants, buildings, and capital that's attributable back to the boards or departments for which you have some responsibility to come back. Now, in some cases you might have input. In other cases, you might represent the RTM at that board or commission, but then when it comes back, that's part of what the committee reports are about. You're responsible for coming back and explaining the situation. And part of the success of F&B, and I know Public Works works the same way, and P&Z and Park and Rec has always been at these board meetings, is we know what's coming down the road. So I've already had a conversation with Duke Deneen of what might be coming out of the summer work for the Board of Ed. I've already had conversations with Kate of what's, if not today, what will be happening either in the September or October or January meeting. I'm looking at like the public, the tipping fees, knowing that they're having a public hearing. It's important that we understand that's happening and when they're anticipating it's going to be implemented. Because obviously with the 90-day window and other things like that, we would anticipate that that's in Kate's budget that she'll be presenting in January. So that's part of the reason why it's being done now. That gives it the 90 days if they approve an increase to move it forward. That's what that list is about. I think it's important that people understand what's on that list, and not so much what the committees do, but what all those boards and advisory groups do. So there's some that I know because we assigned something. Many of them, some of them are on the website. Others just came up. I found that some on the website have been disbanded because I couldn't find anything about them. I called Kate because they had gone for a while. They're still on the website, but they're disbanded. And that's what that is. So it's really focusing on what verbiage you want. You have a financial responsibility on that. Now, F&B has, and as I said jokingly, Edward Shecker said there's a lot of F&B on it, and he proposed that they double my salary. F&B has some primary roles here. So we're definitely primary on debt, we're primary on the contingencies, we're primary on representing what's going on in the Board of Finance, bringing it back. There's certain departments which really we're the only ones to do. This exercise made me recognize that the grant to the library had no other committee to be on it other than F&B. So that's part of what this is. This is just an exercise of something to be done and saying, here's what it is. Some of this will grow and come, like we now have the ARPA funds. So for the high level, like on capital, for the high level, F&B is responsible for any of the bonding that's out there and the projects that are there. F&B has a responsibility on that from the overall. But for what the status is on the Oxbridge School, or whether or not we're doing Rings End, what we're doing on Rings End Bridge, fall back to the committee to understand. F&B just has the finances. Like, one of the things that we talked about is, like Ed didn't have enough bridges to fix. So we now have one on Hanson that we may have to be working on because apparently part of it is going into the river. But those are things that by keeping abreast of this, it also goes with the philosophy, which I've had strong conversations with people, whose names I'm not going to mention, that the RTM should be assigning committees long before something comes to our chamber. So if we knew, and this is a perfect example because I know it was already done, but if we knew these apartment was being done, I know that planning, zoning, and housing has been following that. So when it comes in, it's not their first time that they're hearing about it, that they have 2 weeks to figure out a rather complicated issue. But I still think it's the responsibility of rules to have an idea of what's going on in town and telling committees, by the way, this is happening. We're assigning it to you long before. So officially, those apartments, I don't know the proper term for it, so.
Accessory dwelling units.
Accessory dwelling,
Accessory
yes.
dwellings. I'll use 5 different names for the same thing. But the accessory dwellings should have really been assigned when we knew that P and Z was taking it up and had to have something done by March. So that's part of it. So part of it is what our responsibility and rules are. The other thing is what those committees are. And then I still like the word liaise. It's an information transfer back to the RTM. It's challenging those things, and it's understanding what the financial responsibilities are, you know, some of which fall on the committee. If you notice some of the changes that we've been doing in F&B, is we're only dealing with the high level, and we expect the committees to report on the budgets. You know, we'll say a couple of the drivers that are there. Or we'll talk about this is the bonding, but somebody else is going to explain why we're doing the track around the high school. Or even the one that's going to be before us, we have the Park and Rec. One part of it's the accounting. So F&B can quickly describe what the accounting is and why we're doing it and why we're not going to see it again until, unless they change the special revenue fund. But why it occurred definitely sits with Park and Rec and not F&B. So I think that's where part of it adds some clarification, which is what I've been trying to do over the last 6 years.
All right,
And
so.
by the way, I do know, there's something else to mention.
Yeah.
Because I know when Mark was in charge of Public Works, if you look, there's a lot of things assigned to Public Works, the sewer authority, there's parking and that. Within Mark's committee, that was continued under Monica and under Rob. There are people within that committee that are assigned those specific areas to report back into Public Works. And F&B has changed where we used to have people assigned to education, people assigned to Board of Selectmen. We have 2 vice chairs that are responsible for the overall. But we have people that are working on what goes on in the pension area. We have people that work on the treasuries. We have people that work on other specific areas because that's what we're responsible for. So, sorry for my dissertation.
No, I think it's outstanding. It's a great summary. And so what I would do is take a motion to have the TGS&A committee begin the process of putting together these descriptions, working with the committees of what goes on with each committee, and including the matrix that Jack has provided us with as part of the process. That sound like a reasonable motion? Yes, Ann?
So if we have a comment about a particular description, we should just send it to
Yes.
you?
What I will do tomorrow is to put out a request that you do that.
You
Great.
should work within your committee first.
Right.
We don't have a TGS meeting until next week. That would be nice to get a start on, so that they have some traction.
Right.
And they may not have the traction to make it.
Okay.
Give the committees enough time to digest Jack's matrix and absorb that. Somebody was expressed interest in this, said that, well, we've got an election coming up, and we've got to get this straightened out before next year.
We could.
Sounds reasonable. We have a couple more meetings. But if we don't make that deadline, I'm not sure anything will crumble. Jack's matrix with a reference to the committee chairs will know. I was thinking about, since you did this in Excel, that it would be fairly easy for me to take the actual committee responsible and sort it by committee, so we can say to the committee, here's what's on the matrix, in different places. And sort it that way, so that they can actually see what is being recommended.
I don't mind that everybody
I
gets.
don't know, or if you want to do that.
Well, first, every committee chair has the matrix. So
Pardon?
Every committee chair has the matrix.
I sent it to Matt and to Ralph and to the new Amy, secondhand. And then we have, what?
Ed.
And Ed, yes. And we have several the other 3 committee chairs sit on rules. So everybody has it. Now, what I would try and negotiate is on the various advisory groups, boards, and other things like that, is to negotiate with Kate to meet with her or to meet with the some chairs who are and just do 1 or 2 lines of what that committee's responsibility is, because I think that sets up the major point for it. I mean, there are some boards that have been inactive. I just referred somebody to the new building committee review board that they're looking for people for. So,
Okay, so Frank,
let
it's,
me add one thing. We could take this, have some definitions, and even if it's not codified, we could still distribute it as saying, here's the guidelines that we're going to codify in January.
Well, along those lines, then you can see how it works for the new people. So we get a 2 shots at it before we codify it. That might also be of value.
I'm less inclined.
To listen to someone else.
No, that's a really incorrect and inappropriate comment.
I'm sorry.
I'm less inclined to have somebody who has not operated in government to have input into a role of a committee that they're first joining.
Jack, I didn't mean it that way. What I meant is they could ask questions that helps to make sure that we define it the right way. I didn't expect them to define what you.
That's always appropriate.
That's what I meant.
yeah, okay.
Mr. Moderator, may I read the
Yes.
proposed motion?
You
before someone
you
reads
may,
it?
sir.
Where is it?
Good luck.
Anytime.
Rules has the responsibility to be aware of what's going on in town so as to assign committees, wrong line. A motion was made to have TGS&A put together a matrix of the descriptions of various RTM subcommittees to clarify the responsibilities of each. Is that close?
No, the TGS&A is to work to put together the verbal descriptions of what the committees are responsible for. We have a matrix as well, which would be included as part of it, but it's working with the chairs of the committees, right, to develop the legal language that describes what the committees are responsible for. And those will be updated in the Code of Ordinances in the Town Charter.
Seth, I respectfully, and Jack respectfully request that the motion not include incorporating all this material into the town code. I believe it's too early to say that we do this. I would like to sign up for the revision or revisiting the town code description of the committees.
Mm-hmm.
That may be supplemented by an exhibit that Jack provides or that we provide ultimately to the committee chairs. Here are the areas that you're responsible for. But I have an instinctive feel that we'd be burdening the town ordinances with this level of detail. So therefore, the motion would be that TGS&A will look into revising or updating the town code. Pardon?
With regard to the,
Not to, that, put another way, updating the material that is in Appendix B. That's what I sat around for, if I would be familiar with that. Some of those descriptions are good. Some of them have plenty of whips in them. Our job is to clean it up. Our job also is to indicate up top, I believe, that they have responsibility for reviewing budgets. They're not there at the moment. So I ought to be there. Whether that comment is then blown out to 6 pages of details about all these different organizations, I'm not signing up. I would not like to sign up for that. You asked me to do it, I have to do it. But I would not like to sign up right from the get-go of that definition of scope of the project. Particularly since we thought that we might want to do this before the next RTM year starts. So get something done, get it passed by legal counsel, and passed by the committees and the RTM. I'm not sure that that's a realistic timetable, if it includes the greater amount of detail. Without the greater amount of detail, sure, I think we can get something done.
All right.
May I add?
So,
I think that the high-level detail,
Can't hear you.
I think that just doing a high-level detail puts us exactly where we are now. And I never envisioned that this become like embedded into the detail that says, you know, Public Works has these commissions and that. But I did think, and while this is a little bit more detailed because there's several building committees and that, where we could just say building committee, this, that, and the other, I did envision it as being an attached schedule that people should be able to understand. So like, even on, when I talk about certain reserve funds, I say certain trust funds, and as opposed to going into this hockey fund, this, that, and the other, or the cemetery fund. But I think if you just want to say, oh, look at budgets and occasionally look at, if you're not providing the direction of where they should be, and I can't say that all committees are looking at everything that goes on. You know, even my own committee, when I started doing this, I said, you know, we really haven't been covering this area. And I promise you, I'm very much in tune to what my committee has to cover. So I think if we're just going to come up with some verbiage in that, then I shouldn't have wasted my time. I'm being quite frank and blunt because I don't have the patience right now to not be.
all right. Any other comments?
I have a question.
Yes,
Is
Lois.
there some way of the value of what Jack's done is really incredibly valuable, okay? I understand where Frank is coming from about codifying everything. Is there some way that an extra document can be referenced without it being incorporated in it, or be flexible or something? I'm trying to figure out a way that formalizes some of the information that's there and doesn't obliterate it. On the other hand, you don't want to put in so much detail that every time it turns, you're changing the code, which is, I think, where you're coming from. So could we ask that the committee think about that as part of its charter to look at this?
Certainly the committee, if we sorted this, the Excel spreadsheet sort what I was talking about, in order to take planning and zoning, which appears different places, and then sort it so that it was the P&C responsibilities and public health and safety and such. The committee chairman should be advised of their responsibilities at the beginning of the election year or beginning of the RTM year of what they have to do. Now that, I believe, Jack, that's what you would make this a success and your work pay off, is that the committees accept the responsibility for oversight of the areas that have been listed. That's the goal. And we can accomplish that by having a meeting right after the election, right after the committee chairs are elected.
I
Bring them to
I
rules.
would rather take something that.
I'm looking for a way to do it.
So I just think high-level verbiage is nebulous and basically useless, all right? And I understand the code sometimes has to allow for flexibility to allow it to grow and expand as life in the world changes. So I don't have a problem with that. But I think maybe some of this should be referred to as a handbook, because as I said, I know that I put things in here that have limited life. Oxbridge Building Committee, we're doing the ribbon cutting on the 10th. Just in case anybody's watching this, please come to Oxbridge on the 10th, I believe at 10:30. There will be a ribbon cutting for the new school. But I think that this type of stuff should be part of the handbook that goes to all members, as well as this brief description for what all of these boards and committees do. You know, in 1 or 2 sentences of what's there. I mean, not to put somebody on the spot, but, you know, on occasion, Adele and I were talking that you had to make a recommendation of somebody was being put on a board that the RTM had to approve, and you needed to do a little bit of research on what that river thing was actually all about. So I think it would be helpful to have that one, and by the way, Adele knows more stuff of what's going on in Park and Rec than virtually anyone, so.
But let's face it, who the 5 Mile River Commission was, you know,
Needed.
that we should need to know about. Thank you
Right.
very much.
So this is just 1 or 2 sentences for all of those, I think is helpful, not only to the RTM as a whole, but as new groups come in, such as, you know, 9 years ago, the Sustainability Committee came up with what was there, then it's important that we're keeping that document up to date. And so it should be a living document, so I'm not so worried about it being codified, but it should be part of the RTM handbook, so that each committee knows what's there, what the role is, and because that really explains our town government. That explains our town government. So,
Okay,
that's my position.
I don't think that what you're saying or what you're talking about, Frank, preclude one another. It's part of putting the game together, and gee, Frank, aren't you lucky? But to me,
So with a technical revision to the motion that's on the floor.
right.
If you will, soften it. That TG is responsible, they're responsible for modification of the town code.
But I would also add,
Jack, we will work with it, I will hammer it out, but I am cautious about including the level, what this implication was, we would include the level of detail of the 6-page report into the town code. That's all I'm saying. But I don't think we want to get there. The handbook, great idea. And we have elections, and there are new members of the RTM every year, and they're new chairman of the committees from time to time. And you have a new committee chair, needs to be informed of what the committee is responsible for. This is great. And I would think that after the committee chairs are elected each fall, they should have this material at hand so that they can manage their teams during the balance of this budget year.
so I will make an amendment, because this is going full circle to what yours and my conversation was back when we started this. And that is, I'd like to amend that F&B will take the responsibility for putting together a handbook to be handed out to the RTM, because I don't want it being lost. So I'll work with the F&B team to get definitions of the groups and the committees and put together a handbook so that that's available to RTM members. We don't need to codify it, we don't need to worry about it. And I'd like to add that to the thing, to amend it for that.
Well, do we have a
I
set?
feel very strongly about this.
I understand. So do we have a second for the amendment?
What was the amendment?
That F&B will, well, you can worry about what's being codified, but F&B will take the supplemental information, get definitions, and put together a handbook for the RTM, to create a handbook type of thing for the RTM to understand the responsibilities.
TGSNA's going to put together the handbook?
No, F&B will.
Mr. Moderator, may I make, I think I've encapsulated this ever-evolving.
Mark,
give it a shot, sir.
please be my guest.
And it may need some tweaks, but I hear what Mr. Kemp is saying, and I hear what Mr. Davis is saying.
By the way, I'm in favor of this, it's just the level of detail and the time frame.
Agreed.
No, I understand, so I'm trying to help.
And so what I'm keying on is the idea of reference material, while not trying to codify the entirety of the reference material. So this is the first shot, but let's give it a go. A motion was made to have TGSNA work to put together a revision or
Please speak
update.
up just a little bit.
A
Can you speak a
little
little
louder.
It's hard to hear you down there.
A motion was made to have TGSNA work to put together a revision or update to the town code of the descriptions of RTM committees with reference to the draft matrix or F&B prepared supplemental information. I start to lose it here. Let's see. Give me one moment. Information regarding the descriptions of the various RTM subcommittees to clarify the responsibilities of each, to be referenced, or a guide to the activities of each going forward. I rambled there a bit, but so did the conversation. So.
Given the rambling nature of this, I'll ask for a second, as this is a new resolution, please. Have a second for that?
Who was the first on that?
Well, the motion was.
Oh, was it
from-
Jack?
Was sort of from Jack and Frank together, I guess.
It's to scrub this and start over with it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, fair.
Frank said he'd amend his motion. How about that? Thank you. And we do have a second. Thank you, Lois. And a question.
Were you the second?
I'll second. I'm good seconding. But it seems to me that the second half of that verbiage sort of embellished on what was in the first half. And I'm wondering if it can be shortened to like 3/4 of the way through. The first half was a little bit of the second half rather than this long thing that doesn't. I mean, I think we're all in agreement that Jack has volunteered this committee to support that. And Frank has offered to do, his committee to do that part. And the two of them will work together. And that both are essential for giving good guidance to the RTM committees. So Mark, I humbly ask you to please.
Would it be fair to say that we would bring a recommendation back to the next meeting of the Rules Committee?
Well, right,
That's a good idea.
Right.
Our wordsmithing, and come back with a, what do you call it, report?
Right.
Or a recommendation, and then we can take this up again.
Yep.
Can you do it that quickly?
With something on paper.
Can you do it? You're done?
Depending upon what my timing is, because I have other things going on right now. And if I can negotiate certain input from certain other committee chairs. So like, when we're talking about like certain things on Park and Rec, I'm not gonna write up what the Park and Rec Commission is. If it's not on the website, I'm gonna ask Adele to help me on what's these 4 committees doing in 2 sentences. Because Adele is much more attuned to the commission and other people on those things, so she can provide that. And then have it reviewed by Katie, which is, to me, the key. 2 sentences, do you agree with these? Where do you want to make a change? That's why I think
I'd like
Frank?
to propose a working resolution, perhaps to replace what we have. Is that the Rules Committee has requested Mr. Davis and Mr. Kemp to work together on preparing recommendations to present to the Rules Committee at the next meeting. On this matter.
All right, I'm going to take that as a amended motion again. I'll ask for a second on that motion because, thank you very much, Ann. Further discussion? Would you like to hear it read again?
No, I like it. We all understand what it means.
Mike's got a question.
We're going to put it down as it was understood, and if it needs to be modified in the minutes upon review, we can do that, because I think we've...
I'm getting a nod from, a mutual agreement from the Rules Committee that that's acceptable. Okay. All set, ready to vote? All in favor? It's unanimous.
Just point of clarification, the Oxford is at 10 a.m.
10 a.m., sorry, thank you.
You would have missed it.
Yeah. And implicit in this is that we will distribute the material to committee chairs and district chairs.
Right.
For their observations, and on a timely basis, so that their reviews can be included in.
District chairs?
That sounds to me like it falls well within the resolution.
I think we've already passed.
And the past, yes. All right. Thank you all. The next item is the special appropriation of $563,232 to eliminate the FY '22 deficit in the Park and Recreation Program. We need, this item needs to go on the agenda. I would take a motion to assign Park and Rec primary, F&B secondary.
I
Ann?
actually would do us primary because it's an accounting entry, and then the rationale for the accounting would be Park and Rec. That's how we did it the last.
That's what I would have
That
thought.
makes sense, yeah.
All right. I'll take a motion. Ann, do you want to amend? There we are. I'm into amending tonight. Thank you. We have a second. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Who was the second on that? Second.
Ann.
Who was the...
Make me second that. She was,
She moved it.
Oh, Ann moved and,
I'll
okay.
second it.
Michael seconded.
Michael, okay, thank you.
We did it quickly.
Yes.
I was trying to.
Moving right along, yes. The next item is the Planning and Zoning Commission is in the midst of debating, and it looks like it's going to come to us eventually, local control and of accessory apartments, and also not following the state's guideline. They have to pass it by 2/3, and then it comes to the RTM, and the RTM has to pass it by 2/3. I would take a motion to assign PZ&H to this right away. They may have been working on it already, but we'll make it formal.
So I'll move that.
Great, Mike's moving that. Second from Jack. Discussion? Okay. Ready to vote? All in favor, please? Great. Looks unanimous. So PZ&H is assigned. Next is update on Great Island. There's not a lot we can say here, so I will give you what town council is allowing me to say, and that is that some of it's been in the papers. The closing of the deal has been moved out to April 23rd, and it's been done with the agreement of the seller. There are two main issues on the table. One has to do with the environmental concerns, possible remediation, and the other has to do with access. I think informally a lot of people have been talking about that before we voted the $103 million, but that is still, that's officially really what the main concerns are at the present time.
I can say from PZ&H, that was our big concern. Was
Yeah.
how well thought out had the access been?
easement, actually.
Well, and it's exacerbated because the other property is now up for sale.
Right.
So it has to be, well, we're just assuming we need clarification.
Yeah,
So what action are you looking for on that set?
nothing. It's just, I put it on there just to give Rules Committee a update. We don't have to do anything. I asked if there was anything we had to do, any motions you needed from us right away, and they said, no, this until this, you appropriated the money, and it's now up to the negotiations. Yes, Michael?
Can you confirm, when you give the report, what, if any, is the town's liability if the deal falls through?
There isn't, Darien has the right to withdraw for any reason at any time.
Good,
I guess I'm also allowed to say that since town
I think that's
council
an
gave
important-
it.
I think that's an important message.
Right
Yeah.
up front, and it was in the,
Good, okay,
it was
great.
in the agreement that we approved in the, when we approved Great.
Oh, yeah.
So.
And it's true that well, I don't know how, the only thing is I wasn't sure how broadly that was known to the public, but it is now. Yes, Lois?
Are you planning on making a statement in the RTM meeting? Is that why it's on our agenda, or is that just?
No, it was just to brief the Rules Committee because, to let you know what was going on and also to say that we don't have to do anything
Okay?
at the present time.
I don't know even in the future, except because you mentioned it. We approved $103 million.
Right,
So even if, and I'm just making this up as an example, on anything where if we approve a $10 million item and it ends up only costing us $5 million, we don't have to worry about it because we approved the $10 million. And we'll worry about where the rest of the $5 million is going later at the end of the year. The only time we would have to get involved again is if there's a change on something that would probably go to P&Z because if there's
Yeah, right.
something, or if the price was increasing. Other than that, we gave them options to do bands, we gave them an option to do a full 30-year note, so we basically just can sit on the sidelines.
right. Okay, the next item is status of the FEMA grant applications, a special request from Michael. Thank you, Michael. And at the present time, we do not have any money coming to us from FEMA. We put aside $110,000 to hire a consultant to work with people who have suffered from flood damage. And that consultant has spent so far $8,000 of it. But there have been no applications from homeowners yet to FEMA to collect, and that's where it is. It's just, it's a work in progress, but no formal applications have been put forward. We did get $506,000 for Crimmins Road. And that's old news, but that was us taking advantage of a FEMA thing.
If I can add something, I hate to be a pain in the neck during this meeting. But
Well, I was giving you an out here, Jack.
If you really want to do something here, write to your state senator and your legislature, because Connecticut is one of the few states where one does not have to identify to the buyer that it's a flood zone which has had claims. And even if this is what I found out, that's right. If you want to find out if a property has had claims, you cannot find it out until you're the actual owner of the property and possibly 5 feet underwater. So if you really want to address some of the issues with FEMA and some of these properties, which would make people have to raise or do other things like that, And I'm sorry for those who are in flood zones and have that. But that's something that would really help resolve some of the situation in Connecticut.
Thanks, Jack.
So only 8,000 of the 100,000 has been spent.
All right. The next item, and I brought these just to brief you on some of the stuff that's going on. Nothing particularly that we have to do. Flood mitigation, I think I started working on this when I was on the Board of Selectmen in 2008 or 9 or whenever it was, and it just, the thing that, there is progress in the sense that they're narrowing down on areas where they think they can make a difference and trying to affect the flooding that way. So you have Saltbox Lane, and we have a consultant who is working on these, and they're wrapping up their studies now, and those will go before the Board of Selectmen for deciding what they want to do. Saltbox Lane and also Bailey Avenue is another one, and those two are coming, those studies are getting wrapped up. Tilly Pond is a ways out. That's also being worked on, but that won't be ready to talk about until the second quarter, they're saying, of fiscal year 23. So they're just slowly wending their way. There's nothing for us at the moment, but they are important, as we might have seen today, for those of us who saw any ponding driving around. We get a good rain.
What's Monica going to do on October 3rd? There's a meeting on all these mitigation projects, October 3rd?
Yeah, and by then they will have 2 of the studies done anyway. And then they will make up their minds, you know, where they're going to go from there.
At least those studies are being paid, if you remember. Those are ARPA-funded studies.
Right. So, that's,
Seth,
yes.
all these issues which we were just talking about, different public works project, our colleague, chairman of the Public Works Committee, Rolf, had distributed a copy to his committee. I got a copy for us some reason of the quarterly progress report.
Yes.
The status report that the Director of Public Works puts out.
Right.
And it's about 20 pages. And
Yeah.
it has answers to a lot of these questions. Under certain circumstances, we could ask the Director of Public Works, to come here and give us a presentation, which is a drain on his time, drain on our time, and it's just sort of a touchy-feely thing that we should do from time to time, but maybe this doesn't rise to the level. But that 20-page report, could you in good conscience distribute that to members of the RTM as takes the place of a presentation? And for anybody who's feeling uneasy.
Well, I did this, I was reading.
They can read about it.
Well,
Because he writes a very nice memo.
Right. It's an internal document to the Board of Selectmen and to the First Selectman.
Okay.
So I don't know. If I can, I will.
If he could.
I'll find out if there's any,
When I looked
yeah.
at it, I didn't see anything controversial on it, but who am I to judge? But if you could get the thing scrubbed, or anything that they felt that they shouldn't share,
Sure.
because they shared it with the department, with our Public Works Committee. And if you can get a wider distribution, I think it would be useful.
Right.
Can I ask a question, Frank, on that? So was this presented in a meeting to the Board of Selectmen, this 20-page document, or some parts of it? Or was it part of the...
Not yet. I think, I'm not sure where it went to, whether it went to Kate as the administrator or whether, I'm not sure. Good question.
Because as soon as it's presented
Then it's public, yeah.
to a meeting, it's public. So there's nothing to scrub.
No, I just didn't, I got this, I just didn't have time to you
No,
know,
because I mean,
track it
the
down.
same way that.
Oh, you're right.
With everything else, you know, there's quarterly, meetings that all the departments present to the Board of Selectmen. And, you know, there's write-ups and other things like that. And if you review some of those documents, you know, it gives you a very good update on what's going on in town and what's coming down the road. And so that's something that, you know, when I'm putting this together, is one of the things I'm going to be suggesting is that, you know, I don't think we should spoon feed everyone like sending it out to them. But these documents are there.
In terms of our reference material that we received prior to an RTM meeting, mostly it's for something that will be discussed. But I would see this opportunity, once we get, it'd be nice to get this okay before sending it around, just to sort of let them know. But given those proprieties, is to put it as part of our package. If someone's concerned about the sidewalks, or the toilet pump dam, they can read about it, they can say, that's a good record, put the stuff out there. And rather than have RTM members feel malcontent that they don't know about these things, let's tell them. We can do it in such a way that we don't have to tie it up before our evening meeting.
I'm all for that.
Until, something really is important going on, but this is just not, anyway, go.
If I may, Mr. Moderator,
Yeah.
I ponder why we're requesting this of one town department and not others. There's a quarterly, what's it called, operations meeting that takes place. It's public, materials are provided for all departments. I would love the information. I agree with you, Frank. But I'm pondering why impose this on one group and not another department.
Maybe I think what Jack was referencing, that it could be, should be posted on the town website.
Depending upon
How
where
it's
it was
presented.
presented
Yep.
and what
Well,
document.
I looked there
I
first.
fully agree with Mark that, you know, we do have these quarterly operation meetings, and if anything, and it sometimes takes 2 days and anything because they're rather large, but those two packages could easily be sent to all RTM members, and taking the opportunity, it's a real quick way to see what's going on in any of the departments you want to see.
I agree.
I mean, they're very informative.
They are.
It's from public
First,
comment.
the first place I looked for this report was up on the web to see if it was there. I couldn't find it. So then I called Ed and asked him to send me a copy of it, which he did.
So it's, one would assume it's not public yet.
Right.
Oh, but would it ever be? Yeah.
Parts of it might be if money was required and the Board of Selectmen had to take action and they had to do a project or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, it should be. I mean, they used to, when they did the quarterly reports, they used to actually gave the report and then shortened the time, and they said, you know, just questions about the report. So it should, it would be really nice to see Alex going there, you know.
I will track it down.
Ask questions.
I'm a full disclosure kind of person.
Transparent.
Transparent, not a problem. I'm putting this on the table to the Rules Committee right now, so just so that you know, and also Michael suggested some of these. So, next item is HHR. I got 4 lines or 5 from Chris Price. And he said, they have, the question was, well, all right, are you going to have to increase the budget on this project because of inflation and what's been going on in the, in the economy in general? And their answer from Chris Price was, it's too early to tell. They say they have an escalation factor in the budget now, and they also have contingencies built in. So right now, he's saying no, but they're saying also they won't know the impact until they have more finalized design plans and they go to bid. Then they'll really know. So it's a little early. Great.
Just, and for those who don't know what the escalation clause is, once there is a bid, and it's based upon the bids that we received and have accepted, there is something that does say if the price goes up by X percent, that it can be modified, but there's sufficient, or we believe to be sufficient contingency. But as this is not going to be completed within the next 6 months, and may take a 2 to 3 year to do, and many of the materials that have escalated is due to disruption and other things like that, and several wars and that. There's also a chance that some of these prices over that
Might go down, yeah.
come down, correct?
But as it stands now, they think what they have in there is, for all intents and purposes, okay for now, and they'll know more as they get into more detail on the project. Okay. Robert's rules.
Excuse me.
Yes, Mark.
You make a very good point, Jack, and the contracts I'm familiar with regard to escalators, and prices do come down in commodities. And I'm not familiar enough with these contracts to know, are they pegged to certain indexes, or it's...
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't finalized the
Right.
contract, we haven't finalized the bid, but, you know, there's more than one time I've suggested that somebody should pass something over to you because this is part of your normal everyday profession, so you have great knowledge on it.
So you want to get in?
I actually, there was some electrical.
Always happy to be helpful, Mr. Moderator.
Oh, yes. Careful.
That's what my husband wants.
Oh, there's a pair. There we go. You know. So the next is Robert's Rules. It was my job to go up and see about if there was some pre-produced information, a video of some sort that was possible to use to give people an overview and a sense of what Robert's Rules was all about. I found one at about 15 minutes. My criteria were, did they cover enough points, and did they keep it 15 minutes or less? Because I figured that somebody going up there and sitting for a half an hour, they're going to glaze over. So I found one that was labeled Introduction to Robert's Rules of Order on YouTube, and I sent it out to all of you. And your comments are welcome, not tonight, but as you wish, send me a note, see if you like it. If not, I can keep looking. There are, the ones that I looked at were overviews, and this one seemed to be pretty good. They also get into specifics. You know, how do you handle, I don't know, a point of order? Well, it goes into 15 minutes just on that, and you know, the number of times we have a point of order are nominal, so it's easier to explain what that is while we're in session than to have a YouTube just devoted to that. So there are specifics, but just let me know what you think. If you like what you saw there, I can keep looking. There are no shortage of them, but some of them go on for 2 hours, and some of them are just nice, crisp. Yes, right. Oh, and you know, speaking of the meeting, we'll want to set the agenda. So I need a motion to put the special appropriation for $563,282 to eliminate the FY22 deficit in the Park and Rec, to put that on the agenda for the RTM. And has moved it. Second, please. Okay.
Adele seconded it.
Thank you.
Adele is in for seconds. And further debate? Yes, Lois.
I just wanted to say that to suggest that this we document the meeting would be in person and that's optional.
Yes.
If people are agree.
Okay. Fine. We'll do that. And the only other thing, we've already assigned the committee to that, so that we're in good shape. Yes. F&B is first, and Park and Rec second.
Is there nothing else on the agenda whatsoever?
No, correct.
So the PZ&H does not have to report on, at the next meeting, because planning and zoning has to pass the accessory dwelling unit. They have to vote on that before we can do anything.
Right.
Is that on their agenda tonight?
I don't,
Okay.
I know they just need to get it done before the end of the year.
Yeah, we can't do anything until they do something.
Yeah, we just assigned PZ&H to track it,
Track, okay.
so
Track.
that it's not a,
Okay,
right.
yeah, we already are.
yeah. Yeah, we assigned a committee to track it.
I think
Earlier.
To Adele's question, that is the only agenda item that night.
Yeah, the 500,000, that's it, yep. That's it.
Can I ask a quick question for you to find out for the next meeting?
Yes, sir.
The 66% voting in favor of the accessory dwellings, did I actually get it right this time? Is that of the legislative body or the people that are there? I'm assuming that that means we need 66 or 67 votes when it does come before the RTM. And so when we are going into that, should it be occurring in October, I think it's very important.
Have to get on the phone.
That we need that amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good point, Jack.
Yeah.
So Seth, I think, let me just ask a question. If that is the only agenda item, which should be a fairly simple agenda item,
Correct, yeah.
should we make it an in-person meeting? I mean, why not make that virtual? If people are just going to come in here for that very kind of clerical vote, at least I believe it will be.
Because,
Just a thought. I'm not
yeah.
advocating it necessarily, but I'm wondering if that's,
having virtual meetings was due to a extraordinary pandemic that we were going through. This body, absent that kind of special issue, is a body that meets face to face.
that's fine.
And so, and for good reason, because there's a lot of discussion that goes on with everybody
I
here.
completely agree with it under most circumstances. I just thought I would ask for this
Yeah.
particular occasion.
Right.
Do we want to take
No.
over early on that meeting? About 20 minutes?
I take the over-under on
That's because we'll start 5 minutes late.
of the
And
quorum.
it'll take more time to take attendance than it will to vote on it.
Take it to death, for heaven's sakes, it's the only thing on the agenda.
Yes. Well, I could always invite 4 or 5 people to come in and present on something, and
No, we need to vote on.
I think be glad that you get those, because there are nights when, we go to
I
11.
think Mark raises a
Yeah,
point.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes,
we-
yes.
I think we need to vote on that motion to set. the
Yes, we
agenda.
do, sir.
Okay.
So,
Keeping you focused, boss.
yes. So can I have a motion, please, I asked for the motion. I guess I just
You the
never got a
motion.
second.
You got your second.
All right. So, and now at this point, all those in favor, please. Okay, opposed, I see none. Abstentions, I see none. It's unanimous. And is there any new business? Thank you. In that case, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask you one question?
Ah, yes.
Go back to the virtual versus in person. Has the law, has the time run out on what the governor said?
No.
No, that is not.
So we could
But-
have a virtual meeting.
Yeah, it was the governor, yeah. If you could get it to work and if it, right.
We never had any problem with the virtual meetings.
We did pretty well when we did the 103 million for 80 people who were in here. I think it was a pretty good turnout. All right, so I'll accept for the second time a motion to adjourn. Yes, Ann, thank you. Second. Thank you, Joe. All in favor, please rise.